What's up, college football fans? Sonoy Valente here once again with the Mean Green Show. Today, joined by Memphis insider Chris Latham, going to preview this Florida State Memphis game. But before all that, you guys already know the drill. If you're a fan of college football, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Chris, I appreciate it. Thoughts on Memphis's first two games?
Yeah, man. I guess I'll start with the North Alabama game. I mean, it's pretty hard to take too much away from a game like that against an inferior FCS opponent. But Memphis did only rush for 50 yards in that game with just a 2.6 yards per carry, which had me pretty worried, to be honest, because if you can't run the ball on a team like that, who the week prior to that actually lost to another FCS opponent. I don't remember the name of the team. They lost to them by a good margin, and the other team ran for over 200 yards on them. So seeing them only be able to run for 50 yards, only have a 2.6 yards per carry week one, I was a little worried about the run game. Obviously, I don't like to draw too many conclusions from a week one game against an FCS opponent. Obviously, the I was told after the game by the OC that the dynamic playbook wasn't even opened at all. So obviously, you know, they weren't they weren't showing much in that game, but that's the type of team you should be able to just run it straight down their throats the entire game. So that had me a little worried. And then within that game, also Sutton Smith, starting running back, got hurt. He's now out for the season, which that's a big blow. I can't lie. He's probably the most dynamic back in that backfield. As far as from what I've heard, it was Mario Anderson 1A and Sutton Smith 1B. Like they were kind of 1A, 1B situation. So losing Sutton, that's a big deal. But I think all my worries were kind of put to rest in game two against Troy when they just came out and dominated from start to finish. It was about as dominant of a game as I've seen in a while for Memphis, just based off the fact that they were able to run for 211 yards. The yards per carry was all the way up to like 8, I think. They only threw for 170, but like I said before, I was again told that they didn't even open their dynamic playbook, and they have 3 dynamic playbooks, and they didn't open any of them in that game. So my overall, I'm pleased with the first 2 games, and I'm glad that they were able to get through them without really showing much either.
What's your biggest concern for the Tigers in this Florida State matchup?
Man, um, I would say it's, it's probably the trenches. I mean, I there's a lot of concerns. Obviously, playing a team that's that talented, but it's always my biggest concern in these Group of Five versus Power Five, powerhouse games. I think the trenches are always where the biggest discrepancy is found in those Group of Five and Power Five teams. And while I think our starters, they're big and they're pretty skilled and solid and good at their position. I just think the depth is where we're gonna have a huge issue because I mean this I mean let's just be honest. A Power Five school like Florida State, they're recruiting 4 and 5 stars in and out all the time. And a school like Memphis, unfortunately, unable to do that. So I worry about the depth in the trenches. Like I said, I think our first string guys can hold up, but yeah, I have my worries there. But overall, I think we match up really well with them, and obviously the quarterback battle. I think we have that one, and I think that's a pretty big deal.
I would agree. It's so crazy to think about, that Memphis has the better quarterback than Florida State. But yeah, I agree wholeheartedly there. Just what we've seen from Hennigan through the years, and honestly, DJ Uyunglele from through the years. I mean, there's a large sample size from both, and I agree. And that's crazy to think that Memphis
Yeah, I
has
know.
the upper hand at quarterback. What does Memphis have to do to pull off the upset?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough. I mean, a lot of Memphis fans they're kind of going into this thinking it's it's gonna be like Memphis is just gonna come out with a win, like they just think is gonna happen, and it's just not that easy. I know Florida State hasn't looked great. Obviously, they've looked pretty horrific, actually, if you ask me. But it's a team that they can't start 0-3. In Tallahassee, that's not something you can do. You can't at Florida State. You can't start 0-3 with losses to Georgia Tech, Boston College, and then Memphis. So I mean, I think you just got to play a clean game. gotta give Seth the ultimate green light, in my opinion. You gotta just let him do whatever he wants. I mean, it's the type of game where you have your senior quarterback. He started here for 4 years. He's an elite quarterback in my eyes. This is the kind of game you just give him the reins to the offense and let him run with it. So, I mean, I think he's made for this kind of moment. So, yeah, I'm excited, and I mean, I those would be my keys right there.
So as we're recording it's Monday, September 9th, and I believe the spread is it's Florida State 6.5 point favorites. What are your thoughts on the spread?
Yeah, I'm not really too worried about it, but it opened at 1.5, which is obviously like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Florida State's only a 1.5 point favorite against Memphis. That really shocked me. But ever since the day that spread opened, it's been trending toward FSU for a while. So I mean, I think 6.5 is about right. I mean, I don't look too deeply into it, but I think like 6.5, 7.5. I think that's about where the I mean, I don't see it as disrespect or respect or anything like that. I think that's right about where it should be at. But I'd probably I don't, see that's tough because I'm a fan of Memphis, so I'm not going to give any betting advice on here, but I yeah, I'm just going to stay away from giving advice because I'm a fan and I don't want get any hateful DMs or anything.
Do you believe a one-loss Memphis team, the one loss being to Florida State, makes the playoffs?
I'm I'm glad you asked this question because there's so much that goes into this. It's just it's almost impossible to really predict if a one loss Memphis would get in because because the committee last year they let Liberty in over a two-loss SMU team and Liberty went in and got smacked. So I mean, if Liberty runs the table, it would be interesting to see if whatever one-loss Group of Five team that wins their conference championship, like if a team, what I'm saying is like a team from the Mountain West or the American, if they obviously a much stronger conference than what Liberty's in, if they can go 11-1 and then Liberty they run the table, will the committee will they lean the other way this time, you know? So, I mean, I think an 11-1 Memphis today, like if I had to say today, I would think that they would be safe. With their only loss being to Florida State, I would think they would be safe getting in. Now, something I thought of, something that popped into my head whenever I saw this question was what if, because I mean, there's still a chance Memphis could go 12-0 at this point. I don't think it's likely, but if you think about it, if there's a 12-0 Memphis and then you got Boise at 11-1 and their only loss is to a 3 point loss to Oregon, I'm starting to wonder then is the committee going to have they're going to have a real dilemma on their hands because I don't know how you could keep Boise out in that situation. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but
That's
that would be really interesting.
that's a really good point. I would think they would lean Memphis, and I think a lot of it would depend on how Oregon does. I mean, if Oregon tanks, which they don't look like world beaters, but that is a good point though. A one loss Boise State, and I wonder if there's any world where they would put two in. But
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking like they would have to put both of those teams like because Oregon they might not be what everyone thought they were going to be, but I'd be shocked if they don't win at least 9 or 10 games. Like they're still going to be a good team. So you look at an 11-1 Boise and then a 12-0 Memphis. That could get really interesting in my eyes.
that could be. That could get very very interesting. I agree. Score prediction for the game.
Oh, I hate doing this because you have to channel your inner fandom and try to make a respectable pick that's not too lopsided toward Memphis. But I'm gonna go with Memphis. Uh, Seth Hennigan, he's a difference maker in my eyes, and when they really open up that playbook, and they are going to this Saturday, I think, and he has all the weapons around him. He's got Blankumsey, he's got Rock Taylor. Those guys haven't even scratched the surface of getting going yet, and they're ready to get going this week. And after seeing, I was worried about the run game, but after seeing him run for 220 on Troy and just control that game, dominate that game from start to finish, Troy's not a laughing stock of a program by any means. So I was very pleased seeing that. So I'm gonna go 31-27 Memphis. Really close one. Uh, Thinking like maybe a last minute drive to seal the deal or something like that. But I really think DJ Ungalele is a very subpar quarterback to put it nicely. I I don't think very highly of him as a quarterback, and from watching their first 2 games, which I've watched both, that his receivers aren't helping him out at all. The D line was supposed to be quote unquote the best in the country, and they're not looking to fit that bill at all. And their team, it just looks so disoriented. It's come together in very short spurts, like maybe one drive at a time, but they have one good drive and then they have 3 bad ones. So I think Memphis is a disciplined, experienced team, and I think Memphis is the best team that they have played yet. So I'm going Memphis.
Going back to your point of where, they've shown flashes on certain drives, and back in week 0 when they played Georgia Tech, everybody seemed to be high on him. Nick Saban being one of those guys, saying he's been to the practice, and what he saw, they look like a playoff bound team, and so on and so forth. Look big, tough, physical, all that. And then after the first drive of Georgia Tech, they looked the part, and then the wheels just kind of came off. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. Last thing, Chris, where can everybody find the coverage that you do for Memphis, and all the stuff that you do?
Yeah, so my Twitter, that the at to that is 901 Chris L. Don't do much on there, just here and there spout out some opinions. But I guess the best place to find my work would be at tigerblueprint.com. That's our website. We write articles on there, push out content, and we just also started a podcast called the Tiger Blueprint Podcast on YouTube, and we're pretty excited to get that rolling. So yeah, that's it for the plugs for me.
Tigerblueprint.com on YouTube. Okay, I'm going to link that in the description on this. So check that out, guys. And Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man.